transponder can carry 2 television signals. Telesat provides consulting services on a worldwide basis. With over 20 years of engineering and technical experience in the field of satellite communications, Telesat's consulting services are in constant demand around the world. These consulting services are on the design, procurement, launch, and operation of satellites, and the design of entire satellite communication systems. Telesat's success in the communications industry can be attributed to its people and advanced technology, and to its combined commitment to the customer, service quality, and to future applications of satellite services.
Here live again in Jupiter Control, we're proceeding perfectly on schedule with this launch. In front of you is John Korda, the launch director for the ANIK program. We're down to 15 minutes and 11 seconds and still counting. Mr. Korda is one of 3 men we're going to be focusing in on tonight and living, in a sense, this experiment in yet another generation of Canadian telecommunications satellites. With him is Harry Kowalik, we see right there, Vice President of Space Systems for Telesat, and Leonard Stoss, Director of Space Systems. These 3 men have, between them, some 60 years of experience for Telesat and in space. Now we're going to take a close look at the ANIK as it's been put through its paces here in Kourou.
Yes, after arriving here on the 5th of February, the first few weeks were used to verify and control the satellite to ensure that all the systems were ready for the launch. This included spin balancing, as you saw, and fueling under strict security rules with airtight costumes to ensure the security of the people. In the last 10 days of the campaign, final launch preparations take place where the satellite is mated to its adapter. It's then encapsulated in the fairing, which is protecting it from the environment and the first part of the flight. It's transported to the launch tower, hoisted and put on top of the launcher. We're back into Jupiter again, and it's still all systems go. The Director of Operations seems pretty calm. Yvon Le Guin, it's one of his first launches. This panel with Mr. Korda in the background is one of the control points for this launch. The launcher campaign started 7 weeks ago with arrival by boat to French Guiana and a road transport of about 70 miles up here to Kourou. This is a large convoy with about 10 big lorries to bring all the launcher elements here. In the first few days, the 3 stages are assembled on top of each other in the vertical assembly hall. It takes approximately 1 day to erect one stage, and starting with the first stage with its 4 Viking 5 engines, the second stage with a Viking 4 engine, which is similar to the first stage engines. The third stage is the last to be erected, and it's characterized by its thermal protection around the tanks, keeping the cryogenic fuels at the right temperature before the launch. Finally, the brain of the launcher, the vehicle equipment bay, is integrated and encapsulated, and the launcher is ready for transfer. It's pulled on the rails by a truck the 1,000 meters from the assembly hall to the launch tower, where the cryogenic arms are attached. The 4 solid boosters are being assembled to the first stage. This is the first time, by the way, we using 4 solid boosters, as we've said earlier. Finally, the gantry, which we've talked about earlier as well, is being put around the launcher.
And as you can see, the big Ariane rocket illuminated against the night sky here in Kourou with 11 minutes and 17 seconds now and counting, and our big status panel all green, all go. Sune, you mentioned those cryogenic arms. We're going to be getting a good look at those just before launch in a nice close-up just before liftoff. And we're going to take a good close look, too, at this fascinating field, this high-technology field of cryogenics.
The launcher that will lift off tonight is an Ariane 44P with 4 solid rocket boosters and is carrying as payload the satellite ANIK E2. The cryogenic part of the launcher is situated in the 3rd stage. Here we see the tanks with the motor below hidden by the interstage skirt. The cryogenic activity in the Ariane program concerns the 4 products: liquid hydrogen, oxygen, helium and nitrogen. The first 2 serve exclusively as propellants for the 3rd stage. The others are more versatile fluids, which on one hand are used for pressurization of systems on the launch vehicle, and on the other hand for various ground systems. Liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen are produced at the liquid oxygen plant. Liquid helium stored at 270 degrees is transferred to gaseous helium via special heaters. Liquid hydrogen arrives from Europe in cryogenic containers and are transferred to storage tanks where they stay until final countdown. The filling process of the 3rd stage is performed in the following way. The liquid oxygen is pressurized in its storage tanks and are transferred via these lines through the cryogenic arms to the 3rd stage tank, represented here by this square. All necessary information to follow the filling and the checkout of the 3rd stage is available on the consoles in the Launch Control Center. The real-time commands for transfer of the propellants at very low temperatures are given automatically by the computers in the Launch Control Center. The liquid hydrogen procedure is the same as for the liquid oxygen. The propellant storage tanks shown here are pressurized. The propellant is then flowing through the lines, the cryogenic arms and into the 3rd stage tanks. Cryotechnic is above all what gives increased performance, twice that of an engine using storable fuels. It's also a technology of high complexity that, correctly implemented, ensures the superiority of Ariane. The attachment of the cryogenic arms marks the start of the final phases of the Ariane launch preparations. They open at only 4 seconds before ignition, after having ensured the fueling of the 3rd stage with cryogenic fuels.
We've just received word that the weather conditions for tonight's launch are perfectly within the parameters that we need, coming down to 8 minutes now and counting down with a perfectly green status panel. I can only tell you that this has been a very hectic day here in Kourou, as always on launch day. We had the beginning of the final countdown earlier today, and we also had the withdrawal of the gantry. Now that gantry, which we're seeing right here, is some 96 meters taller than the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, and it weighs 3,350 tons. The gantry serves as a scaffolding, a protective cover, and as a payload loading tower. About an hour ago, we also had the activation of the launcher telemetry, some of the radar transponders, and some of the telecommand equipment for the status panel that we're watching. And now, as we come down to the 7-minute mark, approaching it rather rapidly, we're going to be moving to the 6-minute mark, which is a very important moment in this countdown, because that's the beginning of what we call the synchronized launch sequence. Now, this is a fully automatic sequence that basically takes control of the launcher out of human hands and puts it onto 2 computers running in parallel in the Ariane Launch Center. One computer carries out the configuring of fluids and propellants for flight and performs associated checks. The other computer executes the final preparation of the electrical systems for the initiation of the flight program, the startup of the servo motors, and the switchover from ground power to flight batteries. Sune, in fact, already there's an incredible amount of computer data flowing through the Ariane system.
Yes, more and the 500 measuring points on the launcher are being constantly verified during this period.
Tous de DDO, attention pour le moins 6 minutes, début de la séquence synchronisée. Top, moins 6 minutes.
We are now in the synchronized sequence.
And we're going to follow up the question about the data and what telemetry is giving us during the flight when we get closer to it.
Now, we've mentioned some of the key personnel in this room, but I'm just going to go through some of the key players, these veterans of Ariane launches, this being, of course, the 43rd. The mission director tonight is Yves Guérin. The Ariane payload manager is Pierre Gojat of Ariane Space. John Corda, as we mentioned from Telesat, is the satellite mission director. And the satellite preparation manager is Martin Gray, sitting down in front. He's from SPAR Aerospace. And I should tell you right here that there's an awful lot of Canadian spirit in this room in Jupiter Control. There's some Canadian flags sitting on top of the consoles here. And in fact, at one of the sites right here in the launch complex, there was a great big Canadian flag I saw today, and it was decorating an entire group of hockey sticks. Right here in the tropics, we've got hockey sticks. Gives you some indication of the spirit of what is known in some quarters as Corda's Kamikazes. This is John Corda's launch team, which wears these T-shirts with Kamikaze written across the back. To finish now with some of the key players, in a launch center about 1,000 yards from the launch pad, we have the launch site operations director, Guy Hachet, and we have the Ariane production project manager, Peter Bamberg. We also have here the range operations manager, Ivan Leguen, and we have one more key figure, flight safety officer, Alex Agapit.
That's correct, and he is also in a different place than here, and he has all the resources to be able to abort the launch if anything would go wrong.
We're coming down now just to the 4-minute mark, and everything is absolutely on course for a launch as scheduled. Status panel is all green. People watching here attentively, as of course we get down to what is obviously and always a very tense moment, no matter how many launches you live through. I asked the veteran, John Corda, the other night, if he ever took him for granted, this being his 15th launch, and he said, I never sleep the night before, and if you're not involved, you shouldn't be in this business. Sune, why don't you give us a quick look at some of the things we can anticipate in these final moments? And let me finish by saying that in the key 90 seconds before launch, what we'll be doing is retiring to the background so that our viewers can watch this moment, which is always dramatic, live and without too much commentary from us. But Sune, give us an idea of what to look for.
That's no problem. There are more than 130 commands being given during this 6 last minutes, and we are right now pressurizing the flight tanks for liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. And other key events is at 1 minute we'll go on onboard power. At 40 seconds we'll start the servo motors. 16 seconds arming the cryogenic arms, and at 9-second release of the inertia platform. And finally at 5 seconds you will see the command of the release of the cryogenics and the release of the arms right after.
We're down now to 2 minutes and 22 seconds and counting down, absolutely on schedule for this launch tonight. Status panel all green. Everything seems to be go. Some of the people here in the room, some of the Canadians, in fact, have gone to the roof to have a look at this tremendous rocket as it is preparing to streak into the sky. Now we're below 2 minutes, 1:53 and counting down. Status panel is perfectly green. we're following the final operations on a big status panel to the left. You might be able to see it, a big block of green as each one of these necessary procedures is checked out. 124.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le H0, moins 1 minute.
Moins 1 minute.
Top, moins 1 minute.
And we're now on board power.
Under 1 minute. All systems go at 49 seconds and counting down.
Start of servo motors.
"22 seconds. A wonderful stillness has settled over Jupiter control.
Launchers armed.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final.
Final
10,
countdown.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage.
We have ignition, we have liftoff.
Allumage, décollage.
A huge glare, a huge flash into the night sky here over Kourou.
Pression normale.
All indications look like it's firing absolutely on target.
Pilotage normal.
Sune, that's an amazing cloud of light.
Yes, it is the first time we're launching with 4 solid boosters, and that's giving this intense light.
Ensemble des paramètres normaux, extinction des papes.
I've seen a lot of these, but that first flash of light was awfully impressive.
And they've already finished their burn,
Trajectoire normale.
and the solid booster motors should be ejected very soon.
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
All onboard parameters. Oh, we can feel it now, roaring overhead. There it goes. Perhaps you can hear it in the background as it roars over Jupiter control.
Largage des papes.
The solid rocket boost motors have been ejected.
Toutes les pressions sont normales.
All indications aboard that they're receiving in those computers we've been talking about are normal.
Pilotage, trajectoire normaux.
There goes that roar deep into the night here over Kourou.
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
Everything aboard is normal.
And now you're seeing the status of the trajectory.
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
Now, Sune, we're going to be following this trajectory on this simulation for the next several minutes, all the way through the burn of the 3rd stage. Tell us a little bit about some of the statistics we're
Tous les
watching
paramètres sont normaux.
on the right.
On the right-hand side, we have the computer which is working, computer number 1. You have the time, which is elapsed 137
Paramètres sont
seconds.
normaux.
The Breton 1 radar is following the
Trajectoire normale.
satellite and the launcher, and we have an inclination of 63 degrees, and we have reached 41 kilometers altitude already, and we're moving forward with 1.1 kilometer per second already.
And at
Tous les paramètres bord normaux.
all parameters on board are correct. 2 minutes 45 seconds now into flight 43 of Ariane, and everything seems to be going like clockwork. Tell me, Sune,
Tous les paramètres bord normaux.
it's important, I think, to underline that those 4 solid fuel boosters are just one of the many options that a satellite contractor
Trajectoire normale.
can engage to be specifically tailored to his payload.
That's correct. Ariane
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
can launch satellites fully loaded from 1.8 tons to 4.2 with different configurations.
Extinction, premier étage.
End of burn, first stage.
Everything is going absolutely normal.
Séparation 1, 2, allumage, deuxième étage.
And we've just been told that the second stage is ignited. We can also point out that not only does Ariane launch one satellite, as they're doing tonight, but they often have the capability of
Tous
doing
les
two.
paramètres sont normaux.
Two satellites is our normal configuration. We launch more double launches than single launches. But in addition, for the next launch, we're having 5 satellites on board, which is one single launch with 4 small satellites.
We
Tous
passed
les
up a
paramètres sont normaux.
computerized simulation of the falling away of the first stage there. And we're waiting now for the jettisoning of that protective fairing.
And that's coming
Largage de la coiffe.
now.
And tell me, why at this stage are they able to
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
remove the fairing?
We've reached such an altitude that the air resistance on the satellites is no longer important, and we get rid of all the extra weight we have to get a better performance of the launcher.
As we just saw in that computerized simulation, everything looks absolutely perfect as we go into 5 minutes now into this flight. You can imagine that right now the men of Telesat and ANIK are waiting with anticipation as they prepare to see their baby, the one they've probably lived with, many of them for years, launched into space tonight.
Les paramètres bord sont toujours normaux.
And everything on board as well. Let's talk a little bit about this radar and tracking operation that's going on now. Right here in Kourou, there are 3 radar installations that are tracking the launcher and its trajectory, and there are 2 telemetry stations. And these are yielding a constant stream of data on the launcher and the payload, the ANIK payload.
Extinction L33.
And of course, once it gets beyond the range of
Séparation
the...
deuxième, troisième étage. Allumage, troisième étage.
We have the burnout of the second stage, separation, second, third, and third stage ignited and burning.
Everything is, of course, therefore absolutely on
Pilotage
course.
normal, tous paramètres normaux.
I was mentioning that from when it gets beyond the range of the Kourou stations, it's going to be picked up, the launcher, by a tracking station in Natal on the Brazilian coast, run by the Brazilian military.
Trajectoire normale, paramètres toujours normaux.
And after that, it's going to be picked up by the Ascension station in the middle of the ocean, which is a joint venture run with the United States Department of Defense. Then finally, the launcher and the payload are going to be tracked in Libreville on the west coast of Africa in Gabon. And that is,
Acquisition par la station de Natal.
of course, the last, or one of the last places at this stage that's going to be receiving an enormous stream of data that's going to be used, in fact, by Ariane not just tonight.
No, it's going to be used for further evaluation. But first of all, as it was just mentioned, we have moved from now the Kourou to the Natal tracking
Tous les
station.
paramètres lanceurs sont normaux.
And the voice you hear saying that everything is normal, that's based on direct sent data from the launcher to ground. We pick up about 60 parameters, which is enough to ensure that the flight is going on normally.
And as we can see, the satellite or the launcher and its
Paramètres
payload are
normaux.
absolutely on course. We just had a quick look at John Corda, who is, of course, living a very important moment here. And it's important, I think, to remember for our Canadian listeners in particular that this is going to be a stage setter, in a sense, for a whole changeover in the 1990s in terms of their telecommunications. We had a talk this week with Harry Kowalik and John Corda and Leonard Stoss, and they were telling us that as soon as this satellite is operational, it's going to be taking over much of the television transmission across Canada
Les
from both.
paramètres sont normaux.
Everything's on board as normal, both in the French and English broadcasting services of the Canadian Broadcasting Company. Also, of course, Canada being one of the largest countries in the world with a relatively small population of 25 million people, and much of it far-flung, particularly to the north, this is going to help them with their telecommunications and, of course, telephone. It's going to be improved service as a result of this big ANIK E2,
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
which in fact SUNE is replacing earlier generation ANIK satellites.
Yes, one satellite now in operation is very low in fuel, has served its more than 8 years of lifetime, and ANIK 2E with 14 years life is now going to replace that, and with a second satellite already ready and being prepared to come here to Kourou for launch, the two satellites have the capacity of replacing all 5 they have already in orbit.
And of course the weight of the satellite, much of that is fuel in order to ensure proper maneuvering capability during those 14 years.
That is correct, although a lot of the fuel used
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
is being used for the circularization of the orbit.
Harry Kowalik and John Cord and Leonard Sass were telling us this week that Canada has been a long time member of the avant-garde, if you will, of the space
L'ensemble
world.
des pressions sont normales.
Canada got into the space age in the late 1950s and early 60s. In 1962, they had their first joint venture satellite, and then in 1965, that was with the United States, and then in 1965, they launched an Alouette. Then, of course, in the 1970s, began the ANIK program. But the Telesat itself, we should make clear, was created in 1969 by an act of the Canadian
Paramètres
Parliament.
normaux.
It is a private company, although some 53% of the initial startup costs were government-backed, and they brought in immediately clients like the CBC and the nation's provincial telephone companies. In other words, right from the word go, the Canadians realized that the future of telecommunications was such that they had to take a very active and aggressive role in putting together this comprehensive network of satellites.
Perte des radars Kourou.
And of course, as you can see, everything is absolutely on target. We are now 10 minutes and 35 seconds in to this
Paramètres
flight.
sont normaux.
We, of course, are coming up now through the third stage burn. Perhaps we should point out that the name ANIK is an Inuit word, or Eskimo, meaning brother. And the name was actually chosen in a national contest, and it was suggested by a young Inuit girl whose prize for choosing the name that was ultimately selected was a trip to the Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral, Florida. And of course now, from that modest beginning, we've got this new
Tous les
generation
paramètres sont normaux. Le pilotage est normal.
of ANIK E2 now tonight, and ANIK E1 is going to be launched here in Kourou in July. Sune, how does it look to you?
It looks very well. Might be interesting to note, though, that the altitude is slowly decreasing here. To optimize the trajectory, we're using the pull of the Earth to gain a bit more speed, and that's why the altitude is seemingly going down. And we're going to
Les
accelerate
paramètres
here
lanceurs sont normaux.
to about 10 kilometers per second when we switch off the third stage, which is enough to give us the transfer orbit.
There's Leonard Stoss, one of the chief architects of this program tonight. He was in charge of procurement of both the satellite and launch services. He's an engineer who has a PhD from England, and one of the great ironies of his career is that he began in anti-submarine warfare. And here he is
Acquisition
tonight,
Ascension.
deep into space. He's gone from undersea deep into space. And as he's watching, and as we're watching, everything is absolutely moving on target. There we're getting the pickup from the Ascension station, as we discussed earlier, in the middle of the ocean. And everything now at 12 minutes and 50 seconds, 51 seconds now into the flight, everything is absolutely on target. John Corda has been telling us that his team
Les
here
paramètres lanceurs sont normaux.
tonight is very young. For many of his engineers, this is their first mission, but these are the future of Canadian Telesat. And with us right here at Jupiter Control are Barbara Ham and Bruno Ganguly, Ray Miles, and Martin Gray from SPAR, and Richard Lettick of SPAR are also down here with us. There's a launch replay. You can see that
Tous les paramètres bord sont
incredible
normaux.
flash of light and roar into the night again from those 4 solid boosters. Very unusual to see that amount of light coming up off the launch.
It's the only launcher you get it from with the 4 boosters.
Pilotage normal.
Now, Mr. Korda and his team, as I think the Telesat film made clear, are often hired on consulting jobs to help other countries develop their satellite programs. And he's been involved in launches in China and Brazil and elsewhere. I think he's got one in the works now for Mexico. And his team of engineers reflects the international quality both of the Canadian space program, with engineers from China, India,
Tous les
Pakistan, and
paramètres sont normaux.
some Hungarians apparently, like Mr. Korda himself. But
Perte normale de la station natale.
they're only matched in their international diversity by the Ariane team, which is, of course, a mini United Nations of the space world here. Mr. Korda was mentioning that he's also worked for almost 10 years with many of the people who he's involved with tonight in this launch, and people always emphasize that this is one
3
big
minutes de
family.
poussée. Encore.
Not only the Ariane family, but the whole space community is very interlocked. And of course, we're moving now to a key injection into orbit, Sune.
Very soon, the 3rd stage will start orienting ANIK into the right position during the final phases of the 3rd stage burn. And after the release of ANIK, which is some moments later, we will have the avoidance maneuver of the 3rd stage. So we won't have a collision between the 2 bodies because they're following each other in orbit for some time.
As we mentioned earlier, Canadians might think this is distant from their everyday
Pilotage
concerns.
normal, paramètres normaux.
Everything is normal and going according to plan. But in fact, the Toronto Globe and Mail, for example, is a client of Telesat, and it puts together a national newspaper by every single night, sending, via telecommunications satellites, the makeup of its front pages and inside pages, to outline printing plans. This is in order to ensure daily delivery of a national newspaper headquartered in Toronto. It's just one of the many things that telecommunications in the 80s and 90s are helping private industry with. Mr. Kowalik and his colleagues were telling us, for example, that Chevron and some other companies have managed to link many of their affiliate offices with their home headquarters via telecommunications. And of course, teleconferencing, among other things, as we all know, is becoming a more and more used tool of modern industry. And we're
Encore
coming,
1 minute de poussée. Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
we're 1 minute left in the 3rd stage burn, and
That is
everything is
correct.
going according to plan.
Yes, that is correct.
Key moment. The men we've been watching here tonight, Mr. Kowalik, John Korda, Leonard Stas, must be very much on the edge of their chair as this Ariane flight is going absolutely perfectly according to plan and getting ready to launch their baby.
30 secondes de poussée.
30 seconds left.
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
Everything is normal.
Acquisition par la station de Libreville.
Libreville is now the tracking station. Key moment. now.
Extinction du 3e étage.
So the 3rd stage has been shut off, and which you will notice when we get back to the status table.
Début d'orientation.
And we started the orientation to put ANIK in the right position. And you will also notice down in the right-hand corner that the speed will drop off. we have no thrust, and the launcher with its payload will now slowly lose speed until they reach the top of the orbit at apogee, when it starts falling back down again in this transfer orbit.
They're, of course, waiting for further word on the exact injection into orbit.
Le basculement se poursuit normalement.
The orientation is going normally. As I said before, we're picking up a lot of data, and all these ground stations are taking care of all the telemetry and putting it on magnetic bands, which is then shipped to France, and during the 10 days, 2 weeks after the launch, we're evaluating all these
Début de mise en
data.
spin du H10.
Start of spin up of the third stage.
Key moment again. Jupiter is very quiet.
Séparation de ANIK E2.
And that's it. We have separation of the ANIK E2. That means it's been placed into the geostationary transfer orbit absolutely on target. As you can hear, there's a pause here and a wave of relief, as always, as the new generation of ANIK satellites is now in orbit for Canada, for Telesat, and of course for Canadian television, telephone, and newspaper readers across the nation. A very happy moment, I should say.
It is, but Ariane has not yet really finished its mission. We're now doing the avoidance maneuver.
Perte de la station Ascension.
And we've left the Ascension Island.
And of course, there's several maneuvers left for ANIK itself. The first apogee motor burn, and there's going to be a series of motor burns, as I understand it, 5 of them over the next 7 days to make sure that it's properly in orbit. There's going to be the deployment of the solar panels and reflectors, and a whole series of tests and whatnot to make sure that everything aboard is functioning properly so that this satellite
Orientation du troisième étage pour l'évitement.
can properly take up from where its earlier brothers and sisters left off.
That is exactly what's going to happen in the near future, and it will take a few weeks before we are there. And I would like to add as well that Telesat are doing the in-orbit positioning of the satellite from Ottawa. So they still have to wait some time before
Troisième étage en spin.
before they acquire the satellite, which is for another 30 minutes approximately.
As you can see by some of the faces here in Jupiter Control, this is a very happy moment, great relief, and it was an absolutely perfect flight of Ariane and perfect injection into orbit. I imagine that in Ottawa and elsewhere in Canada, there are some champagne corks popping. As is our tradition here, we'll probably be hearing from several key speakers, people from Ariane, Mr. Harry Kowalik from Telesat, and I think we're going to be hearing from Mr. Paul Quilles, the French Minister of Post, Telecommunications and Space. Sort of a tradition here after successful launches, and Jupiter Control is now filled with people who have spent, in many cases, as I mentioned before, years of their lives waiting for this moment to launch a new generation of telecommunications satellites in Canada. We're waiting to see who's going to be the first to give a speech.
Fin de la mission lanceur.
We're also waiting for the end of the launcher mission, which has happened.
Just announced. And as you can see, some of the
À tous EDDO, je rends aux adjoints leur autonomie pour la libération de leurs moyens. Je demande également la désélection de tous les abonnés sur les IO dès la fin de vos activités. Pour ceux qui ont encore à travailler, bon courage et à tous bonne soirée.
And a great salute from the mission control people. And I must say that was yet, Sune, another picture-perfect launch.
Exactly.
Absolutely according to plan, according to the drawing boards.
No problems at all.
Marvelous. And I think I see Charles Bigot, the head of Ariane Space, ready to take the microphone and go through what will undoubtedly be a series of congratulations. We will be carrying it in translation for our English brothers and sisters around our network, and particularly, of course, in Canada.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to
le lancement avec succès par ce vol 43
À tous de DDO, débriefing du lancement demain, salle Saturne, à 8h30.
du premier satellite de la
the
cinquième
launch
génération.
of the first satellite of the fifth generation of our customer Telesat. It's a matter of great satisfaction for us. Of course, you will have noted it's the fifth generation of this satellites of this well-known institution. The four others were launched with American launch vehicles. We're all the more happy as
Telesat est un client qui a été un des premiers contacts de la société Ariane Espace dès ses débuts, et même avant ses débuts, à vrai dire, et que la confiance que nous avons pu susciter à ce client est le résultat d'efforts importants pour les persuader de venir lancer sur le lanceur européen. Je voudrais aussi mentionner que ce lancement souligne bien les liens de coopération qui existent entre le Canada et l'Europe, liens qui ont déjà été amorcés depuis longtemps, et ici même évidemment par le lancement d'Olympus il y a 2 ans, un peu plus de 2 ans, et puis qui se continueront dans les mois à venir, puisque nous lançons ERS1 d'ici un mois, et c'est également un programme auquel le Canada participe, et évidemment le deuxième satellite ANIK, ANIK-E, que nous lancerons aussi dans très peu de temps, quand notre client le décidera, et probablement au début de l'été. Pour notre société aussi, c'est un événement important, puisque nous avons essayé, nous avons lancé aujourd'hui une version supplémentaire de la panoplie Ariane 4, le premier Ariane 44P, et que ceci souligne donc la flexibilité de notre service de lancement, où les nombreuses versions qui maintenant ont été essayées avec succès peuvent montrer l'adaptation qui est faite aux besoins de nos clients. Je voudrais maintenant passer la parole à notre client, M. Kovalik, qui, je pense, souhaite dire un mot. Mais auparavant, je vais me permettre d'adresser quelques mots à nos amis à Ottawa. For Eldon Thompson and our friends of Telesat, I am very happy, of course, to have put your first ANIK-E satellite I hope, in a very good orbit. And I wish you good luck for the following operations. Good night.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bigot. Thank you very much. Wow, what a ride. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're not superstitious or anything, but for just a little bit of extra luck, John Corda wears his launch suit. This is his 15th launch as Telsat's launch director. and 10th for ANIK satellites, and 5 others. And I'm wearing an Arianespace shirt and a David Golden tie, which has been at every launch. We have worked a long time for this one. Of course, Arianespace launches once every 5 weeks or so, so it's pretty straightforward, but we've been waiting 6 years for a launch. It's almost 6 years ago since we had a launch back in '85. I would like to, first of all, thank the campaign teams, the launch campaign team, the SPAR team and Telesat team for delivering a satellite to the launch pad in perfect launch condition. I'd like to also thank Arianespace, of course, for this fabulous launch, perfect orbit. And in particular, I'd like to thank the teamwork that's been going on, the Arianespace personnel that have made our launch campaign run very smoothly and efficiently. They have great facilities here, and we've established very good teamwork between the teams that were here to get the spacecraft ready and the Arianespace team. With separation of the satellite from the launch vehicle, our control shifts to the Mission Control Center in Ottawa under Mission Director Barry Turner. At 9:30 our time here, or at 7:30 Ottawa time, we should expect to have acquired the satellite by our tracking station in Perth, Australia. There are many more exciting, important events to go, but this one's pretty hard to beat. I mean, my heart's still pounding. After acquisition, we will have a maneuver, and then we will start our liquid apogee engineering firings, which will go on for the next number of days, so that it'll take us about almost 7 days to reach geostationary orbit using liquid apogee engines, which are fired many times. We then, 9 days from launch, we will then deploy the reflectors, the solar panels and reflectors, and that's a very important event, of course. Following a functional check of the transponders, we'll know we've got a satellite ready for test, and about the 3rd week in May, we will be starting the transfer of traffic to this satellite. As it's been said, this is a very important satellite for us. We're running out of fuel on our C-band satellite, and we will be transferring television traffic to this one almost immediately. Well, immediately, as soon as the thing is ready. We will also be transferring some KU-band traffic to this satellite. Some over 34, it was mentioned, 46 channels was mentioned, somewhere between 35 and 45 channels of television will be transferred to this satellite, which is designated as our television satellite. I would like to, before closing, acknowledge Telesat personnel in other parts of Canada. By the way, for those that don't know, we have about 1,600 people in the Ottawa Congress Centre. These are the employees with their families and a few visitors. We also have a regional office in Ottawa. And to acknowledge people in other parts of Canada, we have personnel in our regional technical and sales offices, starting with Iqaluit, Frobisher Bay, that is, in Baffin Island, Halifax, Montreal, Toronto, Ellen Park, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. And now I'd like to close by wishing from our colleagues here, everybody here, good luck and success in acquisition and the events which follow in Ottawa. Thank you very much.
Maintenant, Monsieur Quiles, ministre des Postes, des Télécommunications et de l'Espace, va vous adresser un message au départ
Minister of Telecommunications and Space, who will address you from Evry.
Bonsoir, Kourou. Ici, nous sommes très nombreux à
We're very happy to have been able to witness this launching here from Evry. I have many friends and important personalities here with me. Mr. Lyons, the President of CNES, Mr. Levy, the Director General, Mr. Sakot, Mr. Vignen. I won't quote all the personalities, but you will realize we're numerous. We followed this launching with great interest. To be quite frank and open, we felt that the launch window wasn't a very pleasing one. The launch window started at 2 a.m. here, and we had a feeling we might have to get to bed very late, but you were helpful. At a certain point in time, all of a sudden, the screen went white. There was probably due to the flash of the ignition of the 4 solid propellant boosters, but we saw afterwards that the launch was absolutely perfect. Your merit is all the greater as tonight you celebrate a big premiere, the first time this launch vehicle configuration is launched, and also a premiere because it's the first time Ariane launches a Canadian satellite. I'd like to congratulate our friends from Telesat Canada. They have long years' experience in launching satellites, and they will have another successful experience to look back to from tonight onwards. I'd like to thank them also for their confidence. They trusted Ariane with their next satellite, which is due to be launched in a few months from now. Thank you. Congratulations to all of you. Congratulations to Ariane Space. Congratulations to CNES. Congratulations to the European Space Agency, obviously, and to European industry. I'd like to mention our Italian friends quite specially, as they supplied the solid propellant strap-on boosters that were used this evening. The next launching, V44, is an important launch. We hope that the European Earth observation satellite will be launched on that next launch, and there will be several ministers of space from Europe present in Kourou. And once again, I'd like to congratulate everybody for this splendid performance.
We're going to be seeing in a few minutes a wonderful replay of the launch, and right at the moment they're reading a document as John Corda, who is wearing his famous suit that Mr. Kowalik made reference to. It was his wife Hetty, as I understand it, who presented John Corda with that suit for the first launch of ANIK 110 flights ago. His lucky suit. And of course, here we go on the replay. That was a spectacular shot, and I think we're even going to see it again. Absolutely spectacular, the way those solid strap-on boosters looked climbing through those clouds.
It seemed to go very fast as well.
It seemed to go much faster, actually, in some ways than usual. Here we go. Well, with that magnificent image, we have come to the conclusion of Flight 43 of Ariane and Suni. It's been an absolute pleasure being with you tonight, and another picture-perfect launch for Ariane.
I agree with you fully. Nice to be working with you.
And I think, as usual, we will be getting a quick look at many of the men and women that have made this evening what it was. Thank you again, and good night from Kourou.